Welcome back to Vibes by Alicia podcast. I'm thrilled that you're here and giving me a bit of your ear to hear stories and ideas that I find meaningful and inspiring. This podcast is designed to encourage all of you to be so inspirational that other people crave your vibes. Bottom line, if you want success of any kind, you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Every time you think you can't, you have to do it anyways. That last mile, the last set, the last 5 minutes on the clock, you have to play the last game of the season with the same intensity as you played the first. When your body is screaming and depleted and telling you, no way, asshole, you work harder and you tell yourself, do it now. You control your body. It does not control you. You shut out the fear and emotion and physical stress and you do the thing you dread. You don't go through the motions and watch the clock until it's over. You invest in what you started, pushing yourself again and again beyond where you've already been. You don't have to love the work, but you're addicted to the results. Be relentless, from good to great to unstoppable by Tim Grover. You know, Tim Grover is one of my favorite authors and somebody that I follow, pretty religiously. Jamal is my producer, and he's here with me today.
Hello.
We're doing a vulnerability podcast episode today, and I wanted to start with this reading from one of my favorite books. It's from the book Relentless by Tim Grover, and Tim Grover was the trainer who worked with Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, I believe with Dwayne Wade.
Mm-hmm.
He worked with a lot of them, and he talks about how you go from great to amazing, idyllic,
Pushing yourself to the next level.
iconic. Yeah. And so he's one person that I always go to whenever I need kind of that motivation to move forward and move on. And Jamal, yesterday I told you about this. I had a really great meet up with the Podfest people and also with the Pod Houston people. And they were here to talk a little bit about like how we can take our podcast to the next level, how we can make it better, how to promote it, how to grow it. Obviously, if I've been doing this is probably my 94th episode now. I'm really committed to my podcast. It started during COVID. And, they did say yesterday that when you started in COVID, like maybe 5% of those podcasts are still going today, because so many people started a podcast in 2020 that are not around anymore. And so the idea that we're still here and we're still doing it.
We're still kicking.
But it takes you back to that conversation, to that thought, like of getting out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And that's what Tim Grover really talks about. Is like, how do you get outside of that comfort and you push? Because I think a lot of people like staying in the comfortable zone, mm-hmm. right? Because the comfortable zone is just comfortable. It's safe.
Right.
It kind of holds you. It kind of caresses you. It just holds you nice and tight.
Yeah. But the problem with being comfortable is that, want to stay there. There's no like real growth. You don't want to take any chances to lose that vulnerability. So you stay there and you tend to get stagnant, right. And things just kind of die or are just going to be fine for the rest of like forever.
Or stay basic, mediocre, never grow and never get bigger. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I read from his book is the way that Michael and Kobe trained was they wanted to do things that were not the norm. They wanted to be superseding the norm. They didn't want to have the training that everybody else has. They wanted to have Tim Grover train them in the way that they wanted to be number one and grow from there. Tim wasn't a team trainer. He was an individual trainer. So he trained each one of them on their own. And, when I read this book or when I think about it, I think about like, what is something for me that is very uncomfortable and that I need to start really pushing myself on. And talking about this with somebody last night, I think vulnerability for me is definitely that thing that I cannot get myself past because I keep a lot of things very close to my heart and very private. I met this lady last night. Her name, I need to tell you because she really kind of got me thinking about something. in terms of vulnerability, in terms of like who we are as people and where we're going and where we're heading. She has a podcast called Better Call Daddy. Her name is Rena Friedman Watts is her name. She's got a really amazing podcast called Better Call Daddy, which reminds me of Better Call Dad. I like the play on words because Better Call Saul is the one that I was thinking about, like that show. Did you ever watch that show?
I haven't, but it's on my list.
You've got to watch. Did you watch Breaking Bad?
I stopped like at the second to last season. No, you did not. So I need to get back. Yeah.
You've got to go finish Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Okay, go watch it and watch Better Call Saul. Those are great shows. The writing is amazing and the direction is phenomenal.
Yeah, Breaking Bad was amazing. So and I've heard nothing but good things about Better Call Saul. So
when I saw her podcast, it says Better Call Daddy, I said, oh, it sounds like Better Call Saul. I love that. But Rena, she said something last night that was kind of poignant and something that really made me think. She's like, my podcast is about, conversations with people. And then my dad pipes in with his opinion. I'm like, oh, I wrote a book about my dad. And she was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that. Like, that's great. That's amazing. That's wonderful. But you know what? Not a lot of people know that. Why? Because it was a very personal project. Yeah. I'm very protective of my parents. I'm very protective of what my life was. And I guess coming out of my comfort zone is something I'm not very good at.
Yeah, we've talked about this a lot, just behind the scenes on, things that we could do, not necessarily to like grow the podcast, but, gain more of a presence online or just, kind of grow an audience. And being vulnerable is a huge part of that because, the idyllic lifestyle and things being perfect all the time is not how things really are in real life. So,
True.
And I think you were trying to have that portrayal in your social media and just in everyday life and just how you portray things. Because I knowing you for the last, 6 or so years, I know a lot about the things that are immediate to you because I'm around Rusk, I'm around Alex. But, as much as I know that your dad is such a huge part of your life, I don't know anything about him. And same thing about your mom and, because you keep that really close to your chest and, I'm not the type to pry.
No. And I think people ask questions and I'm very good about like, they're great. Everything's wonderful. Everything's amazing. Thank you so much. And I don't go into details. And I think part of where I'm trying to get to and part of where I'm working towards is becoming more vulnerable. I'm that person that's hurt and I will hide in a corner and just sulk and be hurt and nobody knows. Somebody can affect me. I could be crying a river and nobody will fucking find out because I am crying a river in my bed under my covers and nobody knows about it except for my husband. Even my kids sometimes don't realize it because I just don't want to worry them.
Do you think that's part of like just how you were raised growing up, like how you had to deal with it growing up and just kept going that route? Or is this because of,
It is upbringing. It is upbringing because I felt like I could never complain or whine about anything because there were bigger problems. There were bigger issues. I grew up in a very loving, beautiful, very functional family, but we were poor. So money was always a big problem for everything that we wanted to do. Like you never asked for it. You never, talk about it. You always knew that there was always an issue. My dad was just, he was a maintenance worker and he didn't do very much. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So for them, it was very like, you just sense it. You just felt it. And I think as the oldest of 4, I knew everything that was going on, but you didn't bitch or complain about it. And I definitely did not come to my parents with any of my problems ever. So I kind of learned to kind of hold things in a lot. And so if I'm going through something, people will probably not ever figure it out. They'll never know that I'm dealing with a lot. Especially now that my mom is so sick and I'm always at the hospital with her. And I'm like, people will not, they just kind of say, oh, she's a podcaster. She's living her life. She's traveling. But I have to leave a lot of notes for people when I go on travels. I have to make sure that her appointments are on track, that her medicine is taken care of, that I've checked to make sure that her insurance is on par with everything that we're doing. And I think that's part of what you're saying. Like they think I lead an idyllic life, and I really don't. I really do have a beautiful life. I'm not saying I don't, but there's a lot of things that are happening on in the background and behind the scenes that I don't let on.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have those troubles in everyday life. And when it comes to, portraying that social media idyllic life, even I like fell into that trap, especially as someone that grew up with social media, like, starting, like I was in high school when Facebook came out and MySpace, and it was the start of those was more that you just said everything online. It was just another place to like, oh, I'm going to do the laundry today, ho hum, or oh, I went to this restaurant. It was very just matter of fact things that you did. And then at some point it became, wow, I'm going through this like terrible thing. And then people were like, I don't want to hear about that. And I was like, oh, if they don't want to hear about it, then I won't say anything. And then cue 10 years of just holding back a lot of myself and the things I'm going through just to have this portrayal online of like not wanting to be that burden or wanting to let other people know that things are wrong when your friends and family actually like they really do care and they really do want to know. And part of that is just putting yourself out there a little more and just being more honest and vulnerable, as we're saying.
And I think it's important because you know what? I remember in 2020 when I was trying to get some things going with us and you were not in the right headspace. You said something like, I'm really struggling with COVID. I'm really struggling with everything that's going on in the world right now. I need some time. And I'm glad that you said that to me because I would be the kind of person that would keep pushing and asking, hey, let's go here. Let's go do that. I need some photos. I need you to edit. I need you to do some production for me. But I'm glad that you said that because that would have made me feel like, okay, I need to just kind of like let him have his time, not pressure him to do, because I'm very bossy and I'm the kind of person that just pushes through things. And I think I mentioned this to you, that it's kind of a Gen Xer thing. Like you were taught not to whine, you don't complain, you go to work and you fucking put up with everything and you don't say a damn thing about it and you just keep grinding. And that was really my life for 15 years. I grind. I kept going. I kept doing, being the perfect wife, being the perfect mom, doing my job, a full-time job, doing all the teaching duties that I had to do, even on the weekends, writing lesson plans, preparing for my kids, getting tools for them, going to the library, checking out books for my kids. There was just a lot of things, but you never complained about it. You never told anybody about it. Even if my boss even asked me, like, how's it going? Are you doing good? Great. I'm doing great. I never said like, oh, I'm fucking like falling apart right now. Like I'm stressed out. I'm overwhelmed. My kids are little. I can't handle that. My husband works long hours. And so I can't, ask him to help me on anything right now. It is like that.
Yeah. It reminds me of just in general, when you are talking to someone and they say, hey, how are you? Well, like, what do you say? Just in general, like, oh, I'm good. It's like, oh, everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
But what if you told them exactly like what's going on? Like, hey, how are you? Oh man, like I'm going through so much with my husband, or like I'm having this money issue, or man, my parents are sick, and you just you lay all of that on somebody like immediately, and then they don't even know how to respond. So it's like we've kind of been conditioned to not let those things out because, when people ask how you're doing, they don't really want to know. They just want to hear like, they want to hear that you're fine. And
they want to hear that you're fine. But in the background, in the beautiful photos that you post or in everything that happens on social, I still struggle with chronic anxiety. I still struggle with triggers for panic attacks, and that's really kind of something that was created in me, and it's baggage from years and years and years, being 18, 17 and having to take care of my parents. They didn't speak English, so I was the one that was always kind of in charge, and I'm still in charge of them because I'm the one that talks to their doctors, is the one that even if my siblings are actually quite helpful and they're actually really good about it. If I need help, I can go to them. All of them, all of us, all four of us are really good about that. But I'm the oldest, so I kind of like get the responsibility kind of thrown on me. But, even on social, it may seem like, oh, she's always traveling. She's always having such a good time. But there's a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes before I go anywhere. And honestly, to be honest, my husband takes me on these travels to get me away from a lot
Yeah,
a lot of the
you have to deal.
stress,
You have to
a
deal
lot
with
of the
a lot of
stress
it.
that I go through
Yeah.
because I want to make sure, number one, I'm extremely protective and very careful about my parents, and I would take care of them so much. And I think I carry that with me everywhere I go. And I think, recently, quite frankly, I had a conversation online, and I was talking to my followers about being very cautious about where their parents are getting medical care and the medicines that they're taking because my mom wasn't thriving for years because she was over medicated. And so, again, I took it upon myself, feeling guilty. Like, why didn't I pay attention to that more? Why didn't I ask her what medicines was she taking? Why didn't I go with her with the doctors more often? Even though I go to with her all the time, I was feeling guilty that I was not there every single time these doctors were prescribing medicine. So one day she ended up in the hospital, and I asked the doctor, and I said, well, what's going on? And so he just went through, like, maybe I'm thinking it was probably 15 or 16 bottles of meds.
Ooh.
And I looked at him and I said, she's 72. She has cirrhosis of the liver. She has high blood pressure. Those are her critical chronic diseases, something that she has to manage for her whole life. I said, what in the world does she need all this for?
Right.
And so he goes through it like, well, she's pre-diabetic, so they gave her something for pre-diabetes. Oh, well, she's got, the liver could cause problems with her kidney, so she's got something for her kidney, some diuretic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, moving, going on. And I'm like, but does she need any of that? No, those are just preventive, I guess. I said, no, we're going to get her off all of those things and only keep the ones that are like really for her chronic illness, her lactulose for her cirrhosis, her blood pressure medicine, things that she actually really needed. And after those things happened, Jamal, she was thriving and living. And I posted that on my stories. If you follow me at the Alicia E, the _Alicia E, you will see that I posted about that because she was in Mexico having the best time. She doesn't like to travel because she's always kind of exhausted. I mean, she loves to travel, but she doesn't want to go because she's always so tired. She's sleepy. But when we got her off all of those things, she was a new woman.
Yeah.
And I started to think, like, what are we doing? What confidence are we giving these people? And it goes back to being vulnerable and being afraid of questioning the status quo or questioning doctors who we see as like above the fray.
Yeah.
A little bit of a godlike characteristic.
Yeah, just seeing them as the authority figure in that particular. Like, oh, the doctor knows what they're talking about. And, in a lot of cases they do, but sometimes, you need second opinions. You need just to have more trial runs and whatever, because being over medicated like that for anybody seems like a trip and not healthy. Like, I have my own personal medication history, and I will say, as when the first time I was on antidepressants, as much as they helped the first time, by the end, I wasn't particularly sad. I wasn't depressed, but I also didn't feel happy. I didn't feel like I was really living. It just seemed like I was a zombie going through life. And like,
that's how I saw her.
Yeah. And I just didn't feel anything. So then I'm just like, nope, I'm going to get off this. I don't need it anymore. And then I stopped taking them. And then I saw a noticeable difference in just how I was feeling and, how much, like, bringing the joy back in life again, because
But how many times do we stop to question anything? We kind of take it as like, oh, that's what the doctor said. Okay, that's what you need. And when I went to her and I started packing up her meds, she goes, no, the doctors told me I have to take it. And I said to her, I said, Mom, we cannot trust it. All these doctors, number one, they're over medicating you and they're giving you too much. And that's why you ended up in the hospital, because you're consuming too many meds. And so I feel like sometimes we really don't question the status quo. We don't question the authority. We don't say, stop, stop, stop. I need a second opinion. I need to know more about this. And a lot of times Hispanic parents or people of color get thrown under the bus because there's nobody there to advocate for them or to say something for them or to stand up for them and say, no, I don't like this. I don't think she needs to be on all of these meds. And so I questioned them and I said, can you tell me which one she really, really needs? And they said, okay, maybe there's like 6 or 7 of them that she really needs as opposed to the 15, 16 one. And I said to somebody, I said to one of the nurses, I said, is it crazy? But I'm thinking 15 meds is a lot. She goes, oh no, that's kind of at the lower end for older people, for elderly. And I said, what?
Yeah.
She goes, no, it's over 20 sometimes. Like they have to take at least 20. I'm like, why?
I think that's just how we in the US, how we've come to deal. That's not the right word. But as people get older, the preventative care that is given is not necessarily what they need. I think it comes with age, especially when you get older. Then you're just like, okay, well, I can't do this anymore. And then you're just resigned to a new way of life. And like, yeah, I got to take this mess. And the doctor said so, whatever. But not in all cases is that, is that true? Like sometimes you need to be able to assess whether if this medication is working or not, or is this what you actually need, especially when it comes to mental health. Like ultimately, how do you feel when you're taking it? Because if it's not helping, then you can get rid of it. Maybe it's like you either don't need it or you need to change the medication. For me, when I got off of that initial one, and I was off antidepressants for like 5 or 6 years. But then when I had another just massive breakdown in 2021, well, actually it was towards the end of 2020, but when I had that massive breakdown, I was just like, I will do anything to fix this deep, overwhelming depression and just not wanting to live anymore. And just because ultimately I wasn't going to be here if I didn't get it taken care of. So that was a trial and error run of, okay, we'll give you this medication. And then that medication absolutely screwed me over. I was sick when I was taking that medicine. And then I took it for like 2 weeks and I'm like, hey, this is actively making things worse. Can we do something about this?
And Jamal, I think that's a conversation that needs to be had. The pharmaceutical industrial complex is huge. And I think that what happens is they create one illness to give you something else to fix that illness. And then that creates another illness and then they give you another one to fix that illness. There's a really great movie, and I think it's on Apple or Hulu. It's called Dope Sick. Oxycodone, there we go. Oxycontin is it's the meds. It's an opioid medication for treating pain. And so it becomes addictive. And so they were pushing it. And I think a lot of times, a lot of doctors just prescribe something, especially for the elderly, just to get them out of the way and just to say, oh, here's this, shut up and go home. And if nobody's looking at it and nobody's advocating and nobody's like paying attention to what these doctors are prescribing, I think there's a really good chance that these patients or these people are getting things to be, become zombies and just shut the fuck up and go and sit down and go and lay down and just leave me alone. Like, that's it. You're old. What does it matter to you? What we're doing. And to me, honestly, like my parents live for the day when they can see their grandkids graduate from college, get married. They live for those days. They still have aspirations. They still have things they want to live for. But I noticed that when I was going to the hospitals with her, the elderly are treated so poorly and sometimes are not even paid attention. They're neglected. They're neglected a lot of the times.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about American pharmaceuticals and how overprescriptions is a thing, not necessarily because people are sick, but because then, the pharmacies are getting paid like as much as like when people have to pay for these drugs, those people are making a lot more money. And so it benefits big
Yeah, big pharma.
I hate.
No, but it is
But
big
yeah,
pharma.
yeah, it is true. But it benefits them to prescribe as many medications as possible, especially when you become older, because older people get dependent on these things.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes an endless money sink. So they're always going to be getting more money from the people that are most vulnerable, going back to the vulnerability. But yeah, it really is a problem. And we should probably be looking at some of these problems more seriously, ultimately, and just taking better care of our senior citizens. That is a long conversation to have, and I hope we can take care of that in the near future.
Well, it's a conversation that needs to be had because the boomers are retiring. The boomers are at the stage in their life when they're in their late 70s, and what's happening is it's a lot of us in the sandwich generation, which are the people that are taking care of the boomers, and we have kids. We are having to deal with medical issues. We're having to deal with their real estate, their, what is it called? Estate planning.
Yeah.
We're having to deal with like their medications, with their DNRs, do not resuscitate. Like we're the kids that are dealing with a lot of that. And we're the sandwich generation where we have the boomer parents that are dying, that are sick. And we also have the kids that are, Gen Zers and dealing with their own shit and like dealing with their high school and like they're going to college. So we're in the middle and we're kind of that generation. What needs to happen is we need to really learn how to advocate for them and how to make things not easier, but more efficient for them, basically.
Yeah, we're running into a real big problem that we're going to have to deal with soon, because as the boomers start actually retiring and actually, settling into their golden years and old age, they're going to become a burden, not necessarily like, oh, we don't want to deal with them, but because of all the medical issues that they have to deal with, estate planning and just having to take care of all those people. Meanwhile, there are other people that are dealing with their own issues and struggling, and it's hard to juggle both.
Right.
We're going to have to come to, we got to fix something.
We have to. And I think what happens is a lot of times we don't have the resources, so we don't know how to help them. And we just allow the hospitals and the doctors to take charge and just dictate what our elderly need to do. But I've been working on a checklist, actually, talking about this whole thing. And the checklist that I've been working on, and I've been putting it together with my writer, Arlette, is giving a checklist to you guys on what things you need to check for as you take your elderly or you take your family to the doctors or you take them to the hospitals. Like there's a component of things, they're like a checklist of things that you have to look through. I talk about the mental implications for the family, the things you need to talk to the insurance about, how to get referrals, how to talk to the pharmacist about what the medicine that your elderly or taking your family is taking. There's so much to learn about that, and I'm actually working on something about that. And talking about vulnerability and talking about the things that we see, what I want to just go back to the conversation is, we have to really take stake of where we are and where we're heading and really protect our energies and create a really good boundary around ourselves in terms of our mental health and what we allow inside of our energy source and our brain and our thoughts process, because everything gets internalized. So for me, and what I want to tell you guys about this episode and talking about vulnerability is, definitely telling somebody what's going on and what's happening. And definitely things are not always perfect as much as you think they are. They're not, never it is. There's always something going on in the background that you're not looking at. It's just sometimes we're protective of our families, and that's just me. I'm just very protective of who they are and what they are. But coming up, I'm thinking I'm going to bring my parents on and have a little chat with them about what this means for them.
I'm excited because I've heard so much about them. And and Alicia always says, "Oh, they're just the cutest. My dad's so funny, and oh, he's amazing." And
They are the cutest people.
I haven't met them, so that would be a great opportunity.
They're so cute, Jamal, that when I tell them what I do about in a podcast, they have no clue what that means. They're like, "Is that radio?"
Yeah, older people really have a weird issue on like what a podcast is. Because I was telling my grandma, like, "Yeah, I do podcasts. What's a podcast?" I'm like, "Oh, like the radio,
like a radio show."
Yeah,
They're
it's
like,
just a radio
"Oh, so
show."
you're on the radio? Can we hear you?" I'm like, "Well." You know what though? That's the great thing about podcasting is it's somebody regular, somebody just anyone can be a voice for something and a voice for thought and a voice for humanity and a voice for growth and a voice for everybody who's out there dealing with the same situations. I really want to hear from you all. If you're in the sandwich generation and you're handling your parents' issues and you're handling your kids and you're, struggling with, doctors, hospitals, insurance, all those things, let me know. I want to know how I can help you. And if my checklist is a help for you, let me know too, because I will send it to you. I'm definitely going to be creating a PDF, downloadable PDF that you can take with you, and you can definitely talk about that. Jamal, this was supposed to be like a mini episode, and we're like at 31 minutes now. So, okay. Anyways, so here's my goal, Jamal.
Okay.
I'm going to try to be more vulnerable moving forward.
I'm gonna push you on that,
and I want you to hold me to it.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me, okay, you got to open up a little bit more about you and who you are. I know you're protective. I know you hold people close to yourself, but yeah
you gotta do. I mean, the most that we can say and take away from this is that vulnerability is okay. It's okay to be vulnerable, but also you need to have your own boundaries, and you need to be able to protect yourself, and you need to be able to establish these boundaries so that that your vulnerability won't turn against you.
Right.
And that, I think that's just living in a more digital, social media run world, is learning how to establish better boundaries while also being vulnerable.
And somebody that I follow and I definitely listen to is Brené Brown, and she talks about vulnerability. It's uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. It's exposing your emotional side. It's an unstable feeling we get when we step out of our comfort zone and do something that forces us to lose control. And I'm a control freak, so that for me is definitely a challenge, because I control everything. Every aspect of my life is very controlled from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. It's extremely structured and planned out and controlled. And if you try to get me out of that, I'm going to say, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not going anywhere. Like if I have a last minute invitation, I'm usually like, no, I've already got a plan. My plan is this. This is what I'm sticking to. So yeah, I need to work on that and just kind of be more flexible and definitely more vulnerable in what I do and what I talk about. And definitely I'm inviting my parents next time. We'll definitely have them on, and you guys can get a little bit of a glimpse inside my family and why I am who I am. And like those two are just hilarious and funny. And if you speak Spanish, good, because you have to probably you probably not understand what they say in English. It's a little harder for them, but they try. They really do. My daddy's a lot better at it. My mom is actually pretty good, but she's very much afraid of being like criticized because she doesn't say things properly or something. Anyways, they're great. They're amazing. And so, guys, I want you to definitely head over to my community. I want to talk about my community. I have a community of sponsors, a community that are stakeholders in the podcast. Please come around. Please go over to my website, tbbyalicia.com. And you're going to see that I have a community with 3 tiers. Those 3 tiers are so important because that's how we stay grounded. That's how we stay moving forward. That's how we fund what we do. Having a podcast isn't free, quite frankly. So we honestly ask you guys to please be a part of it. Please come on and join. You get a t-shirt. You get a 30-minute monthly one-on-one with me. You get a shout out on the podcast. You also, if you get the Globetrotter, that's that's the highest levels. You're gonna get insider support of the podcast, monthly 101 30-minute chat with me, a signed book. You also get invites to invite-only events for my insiders, and then also I'm including a welcome travel gift box. So all of you that know that I love to travel, I always bring things back from my travel, so that's included in there. So don't hesitate. Go to my website, tbbbyalicia.com, tbbbyalicia.com, and then you'll see at the very front, Inspire Vibes Global Insider. Join it. Come on along the ride. You will find yourself part of a community, and then also get a lot of really good feedback from me and insight from me. We can talk about anything. The 30-minute chats are about anything you want to talk about.
Well, Alicia has a lot that she can offer and she can say, and I have a lot of value just being in Alicia's circle. So,
and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, so I imagine a lot of other people would benefit as well. So
thank you.
You should join.
And I'm actually hosting a Poshmark class too for anybody who wants to sell clothes on Poshmark. I'm really good at it. I just went to a conference and I learned some really cool tricks. So I definitely want to tell you guys about that, and so you can come. And I'm hosting a class October 29th and November 5th. You can sign up again at tbbbyalicia.com. And the ticket is only $35, but honestly, you'll make the $35 in like one sell, I'm sure, or two sells. It's it. Like, you will have so much value out of this, and I guarantee it that you will get sales from my workshop. And if you don't get sales from my workshop, ladies, I will give your money back. I will give you your $35 money back if you don't get sales from my workshop, because I'm guaranteeing I sell at least $100 to $200 a week on Poshmark. Wow. So please go on there, check it out, see what I'm talking about. Do not hesitate. Jamal, this has been good.
Yeah.
A little bit of vulnerability. Did I talk a little bit? I don't think I talked a little bit.
No, you did. You did. We both.
Okay, I'll go into more vulnerable things moving forward. Hold me to it.
Especially in your social media. Do more social media. Yeah. We know.
Okay. Jamal, yeah. I'm taking the challenge. I'm going to fucking do it.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, my loves. Thank you so much. Follow us. Give us some feedback. Tell us what you're thinking, and share this episode with anybody you think that would benefit from it. Thank you, Jamal. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
You know what time it is.